Welcome back to This Week in Racing. Got a stacked show for you this week. Obviously, the big news is Fernando Alonso getting his Indy 500 ride situated, but we're also going to be talking about the gamers rising up in NASCAR, North Wilkesboro possibly making a comeback, and whether or not Kevin Harvick is the latest Cup driver to ruin the NASCAR Truck Series. Let's get into it. This was some major news that broke last week, but I didn't get to it, so let's talk about it here. Holden will be gone by 2021 in Australia. This was confirmed by General Motors, the parent company of Holden. Now, here's the big racing-related part of this, is that they are one of two manufacturers remaining in the Supercar series in Australia. That throws a pretty big wrench into the potential future plans of that series, where they may have to go forward with only Ford as a manufacturer. Now, there is a possibility that Chevrolet could be brought in by General Motors to help sustain some of the Holden teams remaining, but it's definitely some touch-and-go situations going on in the supercars right now, and particularly losing such an iconic brand like Holden is not going to help things. This week at Auto Club Speedway in California, NASCAR will pay tribute to the lives lost in the Kobe Bryant tragedies. There are two major paint schemes in the Cup Series, as well as other tributes by teams, specifically Ryan Blaney with the body armor sponsor. Kobe Bryant was an investor in body armor, and they chose to go with a purple and yellow Mamba style livery. Of course, Kobe Bryant was famous for the Mamba mentality, and Ryan Blaney's actually been having a great season so far, so it's a pretty good stretch to imagine that car will have a good race at California Speedway. As well, the Exalta paint scheme, the number 24, a number that was so famous in basketball circles as Kobe Bryant's, will be run with William Byron. Now, many people wanted to see the flames on this particular paint scheme, but Exalta made the right call in going with no flames because of the nature of the tragedy with a helicopter crash. Obviously, optically, that wouldn't have looked so great, but it's great to see some of these tributes, especially in the LA area. I think it will be much appreciated, and I certainly think a lot of fans will be very happy to see this. Could North Wilkesboro actually be revived? That's what seems to be, at least the county that North Wilkesboro is in, is reaching out to SMI, which owns the North Wilkesboro property, to see if something could possibly be done. Now, do I think there is a Cup Series race in the future of North Wilkesboro? Almost certainly not. The track has been without a major race since 1996, and I just don't see a possibility, a path here that this ever gets back to major racing. Now, it could be revived in several different ways. It could become a museum, a living museum. That's something that I wish possibly could have happened to the Nazareth property before it got so far gone now that you'd almost have to completely rebuild it if you ever wanted to have racing at Nazareth. North Wilkesboro isn't quite as in bad of shape. Obviously, there are some serious issues or concerns that there would be to bring any kind of event back to the famed racing circuit, but iRacing did scan it, so there is going to be a way to race at North Wilkesboro with major series going forward, but in real life, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, this does lead us into a transition that Adam Stern reported, that NASCAR tracks, many of them starting in 2021, will begin to have one-year contract extensions. That kind of possibly will go into that rumor we heard about NASCAR possibly punishing tracks for having under 70% attendance. This could be a way that they could jettison tracks from their calendar to either free up space to maybe reach out to new stuff like Memphis, for example, or let's throw it out there, even in North Wilkesboro. You could do things or have more flexibility if you had an option to get rid of tracks. Currently, the NASCAR contract with the actual individual tracks is very ironclad, and in fact, a lot of the track's revenue comes directly from the NASCAR TV deals. It's kind of weird. So we're going to have to see how this NASCAR schedule ends up looking like in 2021 and the future, because it could look very different or it could not change at all. This is going to be something we're going to have to keep continuing track of. Continuing with NASCAR, it was announced yesterday that FaZe Clan will be coming to NASCAR. Now, they are an esports / gaming kind of empire. They got famous off of Call of Duty gameplay, Halo gameplay, kind of that early gamer culture that was so prominent on the internet, YouTube, message boards, things like that. They are sponsoring Anthony Alfredo this weekend in the Xfinity Series, and Adam Stern had reported that NASCAR is actively trying to get them into NASCAR, kind of continuing the trend of having barstool-style outreaches, different subsects of, I would say, male-dominated culture, so to speak. You've got kind of the dude bros, and now you're kind of looking out to the gamers. It's an interesting marketing strategy for NASCAR. We'll just have to see how it works out for them. And we finally got the identity of who will be driving the Citroën Buell entry in the Indianapolis 500, and it's Spencer Pigot, which came as a surprise to some, maybe not others. But Spencer Pigot definitely was very fast last year when he raced for Ed Carpenter, particularly with the Indianapolis 500. This will be a collaboration with the Buell organization, putting him in a Rahal car, the third Rahal entry for the Indianapolis 500. Spencer Pigot's actually raced for that team before back in 2016, but they're not just doing the Indianapolis 500, they are also using the Grand Prix of Indianapolis as a way to prepare going forward into the 500. So that means 28 cars are now confirmed for the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, which is a fantastic grid, and that number could end up getting higher, as we will talk about later. So all around good things for the month of May going forward. The entry list for the 24 Hours of Le Mans came out today, and it has 62 cars on it, though I will say that the 62 cars possibly value quantity over quality. There's not a ton of interesting car or driver combinations that I could really find on there, and it doesn't look like it's going to be a particularly interesting race outside of GTE Pro. But what will interest many of the people who have kind of followed my sports car racing coverage is that the Rick Ware Riley Multimatic is on the entry list in LMP2. This is the car that was unable to compete at the 24 Hours of Daytona, so we'll have to see if Rick Ware and the nominated driver Cody Ware will actually be able to make a start in the Grand Prix of Endurance. And one of our big stories today, one of the really controversial things recently in NASCAR circles that's kind of taken place outside of the media center has been Kyle Busch and the bounty placed on him by Kevin Harvick in the Truck Series. Now, many fans have lamented the fact that Kyle Busch has been one of the only Cup Series regulars to step down a couple of steps to go race in the Truck Series and usually dominates the race. In fact, I think he's on a 7-race win streak currently in the races that he's entered. Kevin Harvick put up a $50,000 bounty, and then that was matched by Marcus Lemonis, and actually said he would double it if it got on any of these races got on network TV, Fox. But as it stands, $100,000 will go to the first Cup driver to go down to the Truck Series and beat Kyle Busch. We already have some entries. Chase Elliott will race for GMS at Atlanta, and Kyle Larson will race for them at Homestead. Nice Motorsports has a mystery driver that they are planning on entering at Atlanta to try to take this bounty, though it is not revealed as who that will be. And Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports wants to get Clint Boyer in a truck and is currently, as we speak, negotiating the terms of that. So a lot of people think that this is a terrible thing that Kevin Harvick has done for the Truck Series, and I totally understand it, because so many people hate Kyle Busch for going into the Xfinity Series, into the Truck Series, and bushwhacking, which is so appropriate because his last name is Busch. But I'm going to have a little bit of a different opinion here, especially or particularly when we're talking about the Truck Series. I think Xfinity, you could make an argument that bushwhacking is really dumb in that series. But to me, the Truck Series, and again, this is my boomer self-talking, has always been not really a part of the NASCAR ladder. It has been, but it's not. I really consider the ladder system, quote-unquote, to Cup to be K&N, Xfinity, or K&N/ARCA, Xfinity, and then Cup. The Truck Series I've always kind of considered as a separate entity, because the vehicles, while, yeah, they're a stock car underneath, let's be honest, They are a little bit different. It's a different marketing thing. And in some ways, when I grew up, the NASCAR truck series was like a senior tour for NASCAR. You had like guys like Ron Hornaday and Mike Skinner. Those were the guys who really dominated the truck series. And when you got Cup guys in there to race the Todd Bodines, like Kyle Busch coming in there and doing that, Kevin Harvick in particular, I don't know, it raised the competition level in the truck series. So this idea that the truck series is like Indy Lights or something like that, I don't buy it. Now, that being said, this is clearly the strategy that NASCAR has kind of employed, or at least the marketing strategy that they've employed, and they're pretending like it's the next step up from ARCA. So naturally, when you market things that way, people are going to be upset when a Kyle Busch comes into the truck series, employs 80 people to build his truck and prepare it and crew it and all that stuff, and then goes and wins the race. Totally understand that, totally get that. I think... And it's confusing, too. This is the one way I will criticize the way Kevin Harvick has set this bounty up, is the big problem is that it's not open to the series regulars. So if a series regular, say Johnny Sauter or Ben Rhodes, beats Kyle Busch, they won't get the money, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I think it should be open to anybody who can beat the bounty, and it shouldn't just be... even though it's cool to encourage the Cup guys to do it, because it definitely will, I think, increase the TV ratings, increase the attendance. It will help, let's be honest. If Chase Elliott is racing in a Truck Series race, people will watch it, more people than would otherwise. But I think the fact that it's not open to everybody is kind of silly, because you'll ruin the story too, and you also confuse a lot of people, because let's say Kyle Busch blows an engine at Atlanta and Johnny Sauter ends up beating Chase Elliott and he wins the race. He's not going to get the money. So it's just, that's the dumb thing to me. I don't think it's so terrible that a Cup Series driver or another Cup Series driver is putting up a bounty on another Cup Series. It's entertainment. That's fine. I mean, it's a little bit Saturday Night Short Track. It's a little bit Bowman Gray, but it's not too bad. As long as nobody wrecks Kyle, and this is the big thing that I think I agree with Kyle Busch. If somebody wrecks Kyle Busch to win this money, that's that's really stupid and kind of antithetical to the competition of putting up such a bounty. But I don't know. It's not a terrible idea, but I do understand where some people have a problem with it. And I think the big criticism that I can levy at Kevin Harvick is that, okay, great, you want to put some money into this truck series, you want to add a gimmick, you want to make it a little more exciting. That's cool. The problem is that it's not available to everybody who has a chance to beat Kyle Busch. And I think in that respect, it's working against what I think the Truck Series could be. Because I do think the Truck Series, by and large, has the best racing in NASCAR. And even if Kyle Busch is there, this is kind of the funny thing. People were complaining about Kyle Busch winning, and I was like, if Kyle Busch makes the racing so bad, if Kyle Busch wasn't in the race, Johnny Sauter still would have won by 4 seconds. And to many NASCAR fans, a win by 4 seconds is not a great race. So just a little stat there to throw out there if you think Kyle Busch truly ruins races. And finally, we get to talk about Fernando Alonso, kind of finality. We know where he's going for the Indianapolis 500. Fred Watch 2020 is over, and we can start looking to Fred Watch 2021. But we do need to talk about this partnership, because while on the surface, Fernando Alonso going back to McLaren in car number 66 seems like a continuation of last year, but oh my God, it could not possibly be further from the truth. What's interesting is that Rahal Home Mortgage, which sponsored Takuma Sato when he won the Indianapolis 500 in 2017, which of course was the big first Fred year, will be sponsoring Fernando Alonso in this race, and was apparently the sponsor that was going to associate themselves with Fernando Alonso at Andretti Autosport. So what's kind of interesting about what has transpired here is that Michael Andretti, according to Adam Stern, gave the blessing for Fernando Alonso to take that sponsorship elsewhere. Now, there seems to be a bit of conflict within the media, and what some of the comments have been, that Well, maybe it wasn't Honda that shut this down. Maybe it was that Fernando Alonso wanted more money from Rahal Home Mortgage or more money from Michael Andretti, and that didn't work, and then they just decided to amicably part ways. I don't buy that for a second, because if the sponsor is the same, it wouldn't make any sense to me that Rahal Home Mortgage is paying more money to Fernando Alonso or to go to McLaren versus Andretti. It's definitely a Honda thing. There's no doubt about it. But I think so many people on both sides of it realize that the way things have happened is bad for PR on all sides. So if you can cook up some way to not necessarily blame Honda, it's probably the best for business for everybody involved. So I understand that, it's politics, it's going to happen, especially when you're talking about a big name like Fernando Alonso. So obviously, it's great for the race that this is happening, and I'm ecstatic as a internet content creator because obviously I work in an international field. I mean, many of you who are watching this right now are from different countries, and you guys are geo-blocked on much of the coverage of the month of May. And there ain't no geo-blocking here. I can't wait to bring you a ton of coverage of that. And many other content creators are as well. So I think from that perspective, it's great for the race because it continues to drive the international interest. And in fact, Fernando getting bumped last year, I've said it for the longest time. That was the best thing that could have possibly happened for the race because that kicked Fernando Alonso in the butt. That made him want to come back here, run this race, and try to win it. And it certainly added teeth back to the Indianapolis 500. This is not a race that you can just roll up to and win, or certainly not even qualify. If you're not prepared, you're not making the show, and that is awesome. Now, we should talk about preparation because I think that's a major point. And one of the things that would encourage me about the preparation of this particular effort is that Fernando Alonso specifically talked in his interview with Lee Diffie on Sky Sports about the possibility of running the Grand Prix of Indianapolis. That would add another car to that event, bring it to 29, almost 30 cars. But I think they should absolutely run the Grand Prix of Indianapolis. Now, it's not just a selfish thing because I want to see a field with Scott McLaughlin and Fernando Alonso on a road course. That would be fantastic. But more importantly, for their effort, one of the major problems, and again, I stood in that pit when they were at that test last year, so I can tell you this 100%. One of the major issues that Fernando Alonso and McLaren faced last year was that they were doing things, and it's not just about the car being painted, it's not just about the steering wheel, all the meme stuff, but they were doing things in the pits, leak check wise, and they were losing time on track. They lost so much time on track because there were little things that failed, little problems that they had to come in, they had to fix it. They didn't know where things were. They didn't have the tools scaled properly. All these things. If you run a race before Indianapolis, you get all that stuff out of the way, hopefully, or most of it, so you can spend the rest of the month preparing the car and getting it ready to qualify for the 500. And I think it will be very important for twofold. I think this is going to be a much stronger effort for Fernando Alonso. I'll say that right off the bat. Yeah, sure, we know that McLaren got bumped last year and the year before that. Aeroschmidt-Peterson, which is the team that McLaren has bought into, they got bumped. I think across the board, this is going to be a stronger effort. I don't think right now, as it stands, Fernando Alonso is going to get bumped. I think they are going to have, with the engineering help of Craig Hampson, who clearly improved Dale Coyne Racing, a major budget behind them. And they are also, I think, going to have the preparation of running the whole season. And so when they prepare an extra car for Fernando Alonso, he's going to sit in a car that is the equal to his teammates, Oliver Askew and Pato O'Ward. Now, here's one of the hurdles I see this team having. And one of the reasons I predicted that they're going to have 4 cars at the 500. I'm not so sure about that now because of many of the things that they've kind of talked about in the media. It sounded like they're pretty set on 4 cars. But I think if they brought in a Sebastian Bourdais to the team, or an Oriol Servia, or some veteran who has a good setup base, and certainly with Bourdais, a good relationship with their engineer, I think that will help them get up to speed significantly. Now, of course, there's always the cost and the crew and all that stuff that would need to be taken care of. But I think that would be another key to success. I think that's the one hurdle I'm really looking at right now. You have 2 rookies, Askew and O'Ward. Now, O'Ward practiced last year, but didn't make the show. He also got bumped with Fernando Alonso last year. So that's going to be the major hurdle. If they can overcome that, I think they will easily qualify. And with the Chevrolet power plant behind them, I think they've got a really good chance to try to win the race. This is a great second option for Fernando Alonso. It's not quite the reunion of the McLaren Honda Andretti thing that he had in 2017, but it's pretty darn close. And I can't wait to see how this saga continues to go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments on any of the stuff that I've discussed in this video. Happy birthday, 80th to Mario Andretti. Certainly one of my heroes, and I'm sure many of your heroes as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.